I'm really excited about this next fight. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about it. But we got Rodolfo Vieira versus Armen Petrosyan. Rodolfo's the guy you don't want to meet in a dark alley. We're just gonna say
No.
that. I think his abs have abs. The dude is just a crazy Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. Some of the stuff I was watching, and he's one of those guys that he's gonna go out there and completely decimate you, and then he wants to like hug you and tap your head
Yeah.
afterwards. Incredible sportsmanship, but if I get my ass kicked, I'm not trying to see or hear any of that. I ain't trying to be
Right.
part of that, man. Give me some space. Um, he's good. His jujitsu is good. Um, Super strong. Great wrestling, great grappling. Sub seeker. I believe all of his wins have been finishes. Not a great striker and gasses. And when I say gasses, I want you to think like a JV heavyweight wrestler
Porky, hog, fat ass, double wide, butterball.
that accidentally made it to the third because they just rolled around the whole time. How tired that kid is that's throwing up his Uncrustable. That is how tired Rodolfo gets, dude. We saw, I forget who he was fighting. It was somebody off a short notice. And after the first, dude was just done. He was just done, and they just took advantage of him. That worries me against someone like Armen if they can last long enough. Because Armen, I think when I was watching him, he's got poor takedown defense, and I just feel like that is going to be such an edge in this fight. And Armen, I like Armen too. He just looks like one of those guys that's just a purebred MMA fighter. Um, I call him a spider striker just because he can hit you with anything from anywhere. I think he's got good foot movement and leg kicks. He's going to have to stay away from Vieira, and I think he's just too strong to keep away. And I don't think Petrosyan is going to be able to, or Petrosyan, however you pronounce it, I don't think he's going to be able to knock him out in the first. So he's going to have to hang around. Vieira's just like a bull in a cage, man. I'm going to take Rodolfo. This is a very, very, very close line. The closest line of all the ones we'll talk about. He's minus 115. I'm going to take the double finish because I could see it being a knockout, and I could also see it being a sub, which sub is not a bad idea because that guy just loves going for his subs, being a BJJ guy. That's at plus 140. And if you're looking at it from a betting standpoint, Rodolfo has 47% of the bets, so he's actually the underdog in terms of betting percentage, but he's got 57% of the money. We're seeing a 10% and sharp money coming in on Rodolfo. What do you think, Bobby?
Yeah, I agree with Rodolfo Vieira on this one, but this is probably the toughest fight that I feel least confident in. I bring it up when I feel like the odds makers have it wrong. I also bring it up when I feel like they have it right. This is definitely one of those fights where I feel like it being as close as it is definitely merited.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'll add that Rodolfo Vieira. So in MMA, you have guys that are glass cannons. You have guys that can knock anybody out, but they also lose a lot by knockout. Alistair Overeem is like the best example I can come up with off the top of my head. When he was on horse meat and steroids, dude was a nightmare for anybody, just brutally destroying everybody he could with KO, TKO finishes, running through the division. But then once they took away his horse meat, dude started getting flatlined. Francis Ngannou uppercutting his head into the stands comes to mind. We all know the other stories of his lifeless body being displayed on TV. Unfortunately, there were a lot that occurred. Rodolfo Vieira, where I'm going at with this, is a BJJ glass cannon. He is a guy who lives and dies by the sub. If he doesn't sub you, it's looking like since he made it into the UFC, he's going to get subbed. BJJ glass cannon, like Michael Chiesa is a BJJ glass cannon. He thinks he's really good at grappling, but if he can't sub you, you can sub him. So that's where my concern for Rodolfo Vieira comes into play, is that if he can't get the sub, like Ben said, issues like gassing, just being kind of reckless, those type of things are going to lead to him getting subbed. What gives me optimism is, once again, Petrosyan is going to be looking to stand.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we kind of have ourselves engaged in this age-old battle between the striker versus the grappler, which we've seen ad nauseum countless times throughout MMA, with the added caveat of, all right, we know Habib will eventually get the takedown. Who else is a really good grappler? Like, Habib, like Mark Coleman, like those guys, Chael Sonnen, they really try for the takedown. They'll give their all to get the takedown. Even if they do gas, they give it 100%. Rodolfo doesn't really strike me as giving 100%. And I was shocked when I looked up his record and his age to see that he's only 34 because he fights, moves, and gasses out like somebody way older. I seriously thought when I pulled up his page, he was going to be 40. In my head, for some reason, I thought he was going to be 40. And I thought that, this is a guy who maybe if he would have gotten into MMA a few years earlier, would have actually made a splash, blah, 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 blah. But the dude's only 34. And he doesn't have that many MMA miles. Yeah, he's grappled a lot, but MMA fights, he doesn't have that many overall. So I don't get why he has these issues. I mean, obviously I can't really go into the myriad of reasons why somebody's cardio might suck and why he's not improving it. But I think overall, this is kind of a safer fight for Rodolfo Vieira. If he was fighting another grappler, I'd be a lot more concerned about the gassing and everything. I'm going to hold out hope and say that since Petrosyan doesn't seem to be that great at getting the takedown himself, he doesn't go for the takedown. He doesn't seem to be as good defending takedowns. I'm going to hope Vieira can kind of seize momentum, come out on a strong note, get the fight down to the ground, and kind of hurry up and get the sub before he starts losing his gas tank, which should always be his game plan if he's not going to improve his cardio for whatever reason, etc. So, yeah, I like Rodolfo Vieira. I like the sub since that's once again, he's only went to decision one time since he's been in the UFC. His debut, he won by sub. He lost his next fight by sub, won a fight by sub, had that decision lost to Chris Curtis, and then won his most recent fight April last year by sub. So he's only went to decision one time, has no other wins by other methods in the UFC, and his grappling is really good, and he's beat, big names in the grappling world like the Leite brothers, like Leo Leite, Lucas Leite, Rafael Lovato Jr., Benson Henderson's not a bad grappler. Like these are pretty decent people that he's beaten in pure grappling matches at like ADCC, like the pinnacle of grappling, IBJJF championships. Like he's beaten quality guys. It's just he falls victim to the whole problem of trying to get that grappling in the gi and at these pure grappling competitions, getting that to translate to MMA where there's striking and all these other facets. But overall, I think he can get it done. I like it by sub because if it goes to decision, I think he's going to lose. So that is once again the safe bet. But to kind of offset the money line, I like it by sub since it is a pretty decent plus. And if it does go decision, I don't feel confident he would win because on the other side of that coin, Armen Petrosyan, since he's been in the UFC, yeah, he got his contract off Dana White's Contender Series with the finish by TKO KO, but he's been a decisionator since then. So it definitely isn't going to go Vieira's way if it goes by decision. That's why I feel pretty good about sub for Vieira.
What do you think? We talked about this with one of our fights the other day about betting Rodolfo Vieira, and if it goes past the first, hedging and throwing some on Petrosyan money line.
For this fight, I definitely wouldn't hate that because, yeah, as I've just mentioned, to not repeat it, if it goes beyond the first, his chances start rapidly dwindling for Vieira. So, yeah, I wouldn't hate that to hedge because, yeah, sure, he could probably pull it off at the second, but, man, he just gasses so drastically. Like, some guys at least have 2 rounds in them. But that's why I thought he was so much older than he is because it's just so ridiculous. He doesn't even have a good poker face about being gassed. So, yeah, I definitely wouldn't hate trying like a round 1 if you really want to hold out, round 2 sub, and then hedging it with decision. But I'd try to hedge it sooner rather than later. So, yeah, I would commit to like round 1 sub for Vieira, but then kind of help yourself out and have the rest on Petrosyan by decision, because the dude – and I say that, and I say it out loud, and I think about it in my head, and I'm like, this would be when fucking Petrosyan finally gets another finish for the first time since the Contender Series. But we've talked about these guys before. To cut it short, I'll just say I don't think his power is translated in the UFC so far. I kind of feel comfortable, and I'll probably eat this on next week's episode, but I don't think his power is really translated to the UFC like it did, on other promotions. So,
yeah.
You better start listening to the Better in Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? Listen in and cash out. That's what it's all about. Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover old spot from the bottom to the top, hey. Shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome, welcome to our podcast, Better in Green.